السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our actions and to give us all sincerity and to make us among those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with. Inshallah ta'ala, briefly in this session, I'll talk about the Muslim woman as being عابدة, as being a worshipper of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we've been talking about the different roles, the different actions, the different characteristics that specifically related to women in Islam. And we have the best generation ever brought to mankind, the companions radiyallahu anhum, and the early generations of Islam in general. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved this history and their biographies and their actions for a reason, because this is the obligation upon us to apply the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ the way they applied it, the way they understood it. So that's why there's no revelation before, there's no way of life that you would find how the everything is preserved in such a way that also in itself warns against innovation and against those who would relate things to the deen when it's not part of the deen, because it's already been practiced, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised them. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the proper understanding, inshallah. First of all, al-ibadah, or the worship of Allah, as not the general term of it, which is basically the purpose of our life, because everything is ibadah. Everything in our life is ubudiyah to Allah, is servitude to Allah, because that's the purpose of our creation. But the ibadah, when it comes to the actual acts of worship, like salah, like dhikr, like reading Quran, these types of ibadahs, this is something that we have to have the share of it. Some of it is an obligation, some of it is beyond the obligations as a recommended acts. But the essence of the ibadah, as we know, which is the perfect love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the perfect submission to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, that makes when a person reflect upon the matter that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Lord of the Alameen, and therefore He's the only one worthy of worship. And there is a faqah, as Sheikh al-Islam Taymiyyah rahimahullah, there's a need in the hearts of each and every one of us that can never be fulfilled unless we have this connection, this turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone with worship, with making remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all of the ayat of the Quran, all of the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, that is talking about the ibadah applies for both men and women. There is no difference in there. And for Muslim women to really reflect upon the reality of this life, and to use our intellect in looking at the end of things, and not to be trapped into the materialistic things of this life, and to have the fear of Allah, because the end is either Jannah or the hellfire. And knowing that this is something that we all have to face, so then a person would live this life with the fear of Allah and the hope for the reward from Allah. So as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He said about the believers, تَتَجَافَى جُنُوبُهُمْ عَنِ الْمَضَاجِعِ, their sides forsake their beds. This was for both men and women, where they have a share during the night when it comes to the Qiyamul Layl, when it comes to the recitation of the Quran. And this is a sign that a person had taken himself above these safasif, these low things that people are upon in this life. When someone, their concern is this worldly life, how much money, how much materialistic things, houses, shopping, this and that, this is all low life. This is the humiliating life. The real life is the life of being attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to understand the reality of this life, and to be in that state of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that has to be done according to the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Not ignorance, not innovations in the deen, not in the extreme way of people who just follow their desires and their worship. Even if they exert themselves so much, we have the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam to follow, and the wives of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, the early generations of Islam. So when the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and he alayhi salatu wasalam addressed the woman specifically, and Salatul Eid he would do the same thing, and they were encouraged to give charity and to fast and to make salah and so on. Aisha radiyallahu anha, as just this is some examples that Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiyallahu anhu, he said, ما رأيت امرأتين قط أجود من عائشة وأسماء. I've never seen two women that are so generous more than Aisha radiallahu anha and Asma. So how the wives of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was in such a generosity, but and he said that their Jude or their generosity was different. جودهما مختلف. The generosity was different from Aisha, from Asma radiallahu anhu. أما Aisha, he said, فكانت تجمع الشيء. She used to bring things or gather things حتى إذا اجتمع عندها قسمت. Till when she has something, then she would distribute. وأما أسماء فكانت لا تمسك شيئا لغد. As Asma, for Asma, she would not hold anything for tomorrow. So different types of generosity. عائشة رضي الله عنها كانت تسرد الصوم. After the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, she would fast every day. And as you know that she would not fast when the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام was present, the optional fasting, even making up her days in Ramadan, because of the rights of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. And she would wait till Sha'ban, right before Ramadan, and she would make up the days that she missed in Ramadan, because of the presence of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. After the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام died, she radiyallahu anha, she would fast every day, like constantly fasting. And this is something that Qasim Muhammad, he said, Qasim Abu Bakr, كانت تصوم الدهر لا تفطر إلا يوم أضحى أو يوم فطر. She would break her fast in the day of the Eid, الفطر والأضحى, which is haram to fast. And it shows her level of ibadah, and she is the wife of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام in Jannah. And also Urwa, and she was his aunt. Urwa ibn Zubayr, Aisha radiallahu anha is because his mother is Asma bint Abi Bakr, sister of Aisha. So she was his aunt. So he would go in and out and he would see her. So he said, كنت إذا غدوت, whenever I start the morning, he said that radiallahu anhu, كنت إذا غدوت أبدأ ببيت عائشة. Like the first thing that he does when he gets up in the morning, when he leaves his house, is that he starts with the house of Aisha radiallahu anha, his aunt, his khala. فأسلم عليها, I would give salam to her. That shows also the kin and kith and the relationship. Al-khala as the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said that al-khala, which is the aunt, is a mother, the sister of the mother. فأسلم عليها, I would give salam to her. So he says, فغدوت يوما, I came to her one time in the morning, فإذا هي قائمة تسبح. She was standing making salah. She was standing making salah, and she was reciting فَمَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا وَقَانَ عَذَابَ السَّمُومِ, which is the ayah in Surah At-Tur. She kept on repeating it, which basically roughly means that Allah bestowed His favor upon us, and He shielded us, He protected us from the punishment of the hereafter, referring to the people of Jannah and what they would say then. So وَتَدْعُ وَتَبْكي, and she's making dua and she's weeping. وَتُرَدِّدُهَا, and she's keep on repeating it. He says, فَقُمْتُ حَتَّى مَلِلْتُ الْقِيَامَ, I kept on waiting, standing, till I got bored. I got tired of standing so long. So he says, فَذَهَبْتُ إِلَى السُّوقِ لِحَاجَتي, I went to the market to take care of my needs. ثُمَّ رَجَعْتُ, then I returned back. فَإِذَا هِيَ قَائِمَةٌ كَمَا هِيَ تُصَلِّي وَتَبْكِي, and he went and he took care of his affairs and things that he wanted to do in the market. He came back, and she's still standing as she was, making salah and weeping. And this is how they were radiallahu anhum. Also, as he said, and Urwa radiallahu anhu, he mentioned many things about Aisha radiallahu anha after the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. كانت لا تمسك شيئا, and she would give the sadaqat, whatever something comes to her, she would give. And we mentioned this before many times when Barira, she was with her, and Muawiyah radiyallahu anhu, when he was the Khalifa, he sent her 100,000 dirham. So she distributed all. She did not leave anything. So Barira told her, "You are fasting. So you should have kept something so that you can buy meat with 1 dirham." He gave her 100,000 dirham, right? 100,000 dirham. And the lahm, or the meat, was with 1 dirham. She did not even keep 1 dirham. So she said to her, "لو ذكرتني لفعلت." If you reminded me, I could have done that, but I forgot. That means she's fasting and there's no food in the house. And she, lots of money came to her and she distributed all, gave it all in charity. And she forgot herself that she's hungry to get just something to eat to break her fast with. So this is again to show the how our mother Aisha, this is al-Mu'mineen Aisha radiallahu anha, Zubayr, or Abdullah ibn Zubayr, he sent to her also some lots of money. It was said to be 180,000, something like this. And she distributed all. So the matter is repeated. So and even when in this other narration, so when she was breaking her fast, and she, Dharra, another one, she told her, أما استطعت مما قسمت اليوم أن تشتري لنا بدرهم لحما. You could have not saved today 1 dirham to buy meat so that we break our fast on. So Aisha رضي عنها, she said to her, لا تعنفيني. Do not make it difficult for me. Do not be harsh on me. لو كنت ذكرتني لفعلت. If you reminded me, I would have done it. So it shows again the generosity of Aisha radiallahu anha. And these narrations are so many. It's not just one or two. There are so many narrations like this. And that one of these narrations, that a man, his name is Abdullah ibn Abi Mulaika. He came to Aisha radiallahu anha, and with her was her nephew Abdullah ibn Abdurrahman ibn Abi Bakr. So he said, "This is Ibn Abbas, is taking permission, he wants to enter." So her nephew Abdullah, he went to his aunt Aisha radiallahu anha. So he said to her, "This is Abdullah ibn Abbas." And she was dying or so. So she said, "This is," she's not, ready to meet him or so. And she was, having some. So he said to her that Abdullah ibn Abbas from the righteous ones, and he's saying salam and he's giving farewell. So she said, "Okay, give him permission." So he was given Aisha radiallahu anha the glad tidings, which is from the Sunnah. When someone is dying, is to remind them of the good things that they're coming forward to. He said to her, "Abshiri, have the glad tidings. What's between you, فما بينك وبين أن تلقي محمدا صلى الله عليه وسلم الأحبة إلا أن تخرج الروح من الجسد." It's amazing how the yaqeen, the certainty in the rewards from Allah, and how this life was, meant nothing to them. When someone is dying, we always, say all kinds of things except that to remind them that he is going to die. Right? And of course, you should not, when someone is in their deathbed, you don't tell them you're going to die and things like this. But at least to, give the glad tidings, to remind them of the good things. So, but he said to her that have the glad tidings, what's between you and the fact that you would meet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the loved one, except that your soul departs from your body. You were the most beloved wives of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam would never love anything unless it's the purest. And he started mentioning some of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed his favor upon Aisha radiallahu anha. So after he kept on praising her like this, she said to him, "Ya ibn Abbas, da'ni mink, leave me alone. ومن تزكيتك, and from you praising me. فوالله لوددت أني كنت نسيا منسيا." I wish I was nothing whatsoever. This is the humbleness. With all of this ibadah, with all of this dhikr, looking at herself as, this is all tawfiq and help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is how the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum in general used to be. So these narrations and these types of things in the books, whether the ulama, they have it in the books like Sir Alam al-Nubala, the books of Al-Isaba fi Ma'rifat Ahwal al-Sahaba, Still Ghaba, and things like this to show how their life used to be, and how they were, in that state of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the ibadah. And she said, radiallahu anha, that كانت زينب بنت جحش radiallahu anha تساميني في المنزلة, that she used to like close to my level with the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. And she said, ولم أرى امرأة قط خيرا من في الدين من زينب. I've never seen a woman in her religion better than Zainab. وأتقى لله, and more fear of Allah. وأصدق حديثا, and more truthful in speech. وأوصل للرحم, and more in kind to the kin and kith. وأعظم صدقة, and the best in charity. وأشد ابتذالا لنفسها في العمل الذي تصدق به. That means she would work and she would earn, she would do things and she would give it all for charity, and she would give it, she would sow things, she sells it, and she gives it all for charity. So this is praising her co-wife, and being fair, and this goodness comes as a result of this ibadah that they were upon. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purify the person when they're doing the acts of ibadah. And that therefore when it comes to alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the means to learn, and this is something also that we need to talk about inshallah ta'ala. But it's very important that we have on a daily basis the portion of time that we would have recitation of the Quran, memorizing the Quran, reviewing the Quran. So that is the word of the Quran. This is a must every day. Of course, we're talking about those who make sure that they pray on time, the obligatory salah, and you attach to it the sunnah prayer, and then the night prayer, any numbers of rak'at, but at least to have something of the night prayer. And then when it comes to the Quran, time where we, reading Quran, even if it's a small portion, but it's something on a daily basis. The consistency is the key. أحب الأعمال إلى الله أدومها وإن قل. The most beloved deeds to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the ones done in consistent manner, even if it's less. Memorizing, if it's one verse a day, reviewing what a person memorized, and so on. The adhkar, these are things that would, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, be the means to bless the entire day for us. The adhkar before going to sleep, never to be missed. The adhkar in the morning, the adhkar in the evening, the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in general. And this is how things are. Asma bint Abi Bakr radiyallahu anha, when one of the early generations of Islam, his name is Al-Rakin ibn al-Rabi', he says he went to her and وقد كبرت, she was very old in age, and she was making salah. And a woman is saying to her, قومي اقعدي افعلي. A woman next to her is, because Asma radiallahu anha was very old, so she would say to her, stand up, okay, sit like this, because of how old she was, and she would still make the salah, and she was extremely weak, but still she would have her salah and the optional salah. And they would have certain things to help them to stand with the old age. So this is their consistency that they were upon. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed His favor upon them. One of the things also, the daughter of Al-Hasan, Nafisa, the daughter of Al-Hasan ibn alayhi radiyallahu anhum, she radiyallahu anha, she would make the salah and fast and weep, and they would say to her, have gentleness towards your own self. So she would say, كيف أرفق بنفسي وأمامي عقبة لا يقطعها إلا الفائزون. How can I be gentle with myself, and there is a aqaba, there is an obstacle in front of me that no one will pass it except the winner ones, meaning there is the death and the barzakh and the day of judgment. So she would, someone that had knowledge and the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and she was generous. So this is how, again, their life used to be. And I just wanted to mention some of the examples like that. And we have in the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam the best example. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the help and the ability to do the acts of worship and to seek help from Allah. For someone to be like this, which is the real joy of this life, this is all tawfiq and help from Allah. So to make dua to Allah, Allahumma a'inni ala dhikrik wa shukrika wa husni ibadatik, to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help, to have the heart purified by making lots of istighfar, by fulfilling, of course, the rights that we have in our life, the rights of the husband, the rights of the children, and but with all of the difficulty, sometimes when the woman she has her husband, children that are young, and there's a lot of work to be done, at least a small portion of the time is to be given to the ibadah, even if it's something small, but with consistency, never to be missed, and to stay away from these distractions that we have in our life. That really, the least of it, the least evil of it, that it wastes so much of one's life. One life is short, and we need to gain the zad and the provisions that we are in need of for the hereafter. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from the evil within our own selves, inshallah. بارك الله فيكم. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بارك الله فيك.